You should send it to me when you finish, because I want to watch it.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, maybe we could just do a podcast.
We
could really.
We absolutely should, though.
We could do a podcast easily.
We absolutely should, and I have an idea for one.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
Till next time.
On Two Brothers.
Two Brothers.
Okay. And
that's such a dumb, stupid. I hate it. Just Two Brothers podcast for sure. But like, I hate it that it's like such a bro thing to say.
What?
Such a mid-20s bro thing to. Oh, dude, we should start a podcast.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying Two Brothers.
No,
I was like, I've never
that's
heard
an inside joke that nobody understands.
Which is funny because it comes from Rick and Morty.
It does.
But it's also funny because we are...
we are just two brothers.
Right.
For God's sake.
I mean, for God's sake, it's just plain simple fact.
It's pretty straightforward.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Two Brothers.
Just Two Brothers.
Just Two Brothers.
A Just Two Brothers production. We're featuring Just Two Brothers.
As usual.
As per usual.
As the name implies. So here's the Two Brothers.
And there's nothing else. There's nothing else to it.
It's just Two Brothers.
It's just Two Brothers.
So, glad to have you on, Yusuf.
Glad to be here.
You are my brother.
Yeah.
That's right.
One of the two.
One of the two.
Every time.
I'd like to talk to you about a particular topic.
Okay. Well, I'm ready.
So we're going to talk about cancel culture. Okay? I'm sure you're familiar with the term.
I sure am.
You're a young
lad.
A young millennial Gen Z fence sitter, I'd say. Would you say that's probably
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
You're right on the cusp.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say.
Yeah. 21.
21 right now. Born in the year of
2000.
our Lord, 2000. So, I think you have a good insight on this topic. Let's define cancel culture.
You want me to define?
I want to hear from you, and we can...
Okay. I would say that cancel culture is the culture of publicly shaming or demonizing people as a consequence of their actions when they don't face other consequences. Generally, I think that's why people get canceled, is because they don't face legal consequences. So society takes action.
Right, they kind of jump in.
They jump in and they say...
A way that I would describe cancel culture is... So the way that I talk about it in my paper is it's kind of similar to like a boycott.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. A boycott where like if you disagree with an organization, then you refuse to buy their product.
Right.
Because that's where you're hitting them where it hurts, right? And so,
like with Louis C.K., his shows are canceled.
His shows were literally canceled, and so that hurts his bank account, and so then that directly affects him.
Yeah.
So another way to cancel is it's a cultural boycott.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you are in a position of power, and because you have done something that has gone against social norms and have not faced repercussion, we as a culture are going to
take matters into our own hands.
Take matters into our own hands and take away your power by ignoring you intentionally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. It's literally just a massive silent treatment. We don't want to talk to you. You just kick him out of the village. That's all it is.
That's really what it is. What is its purpose? And does it achieve its purpose?
I think that its purpose, well, yes. Its purpose is to punish this person. And it certainly achieves that purpose. Also, I think part of the point is to let everybody else know we're not okay with this.
Yeah.
This doesn't fly anymore.
Right.
So,
this sort of behavior
This is
It's not going to
unacceptable.
go. Yeah, it's not going to go
Noticed
Noticed.
or nobody's. Yeah, we're not going to be complacent.
right.
We're not just going to let you do whatever you want to do because you are in a position of power, and we're not. The people
The society as a
Yeah.
whole.
are
Most people don't have
Right.
that power.
And then I do think that another thing that it does accomplish is it makes people much more cautious of how they
Yeah.
treat other people
Because they don't want to get canceled.
because they don't want to get canceled because they're afraid now.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is an interesting thing because it's like you shouldn't be afraid of
you shouldn't be afraid of
punishment.
punishment. You should just not want to do the thing.
Yeah, you should.
But also, I do think that it makes people think about it more. There was
Right.
like we just be more aware of it. There was a Utah rapists thing. It was a hashtag on Twitter around
Oh yeah, you told
Salt
me.
Lake
Mhm.
County and Davis County and stuff like that. It was
Names.
just a bunch of girls, and they just haphazardly compiled a bunch of lists of men who had abused women sexually or even just made them very uncomfortable. And it wasn't specifically rape or sexual harassment or whatever, but it was all within the realm of sexual abuse. Although I don't think that it accomplished, because these are just like normal people. They're not
Right.
famous people.
They're not people of
They're
power.
not famous people. They're not people of well, I mean, they could be people of power to the women that they hurt, but
That's true.
but
Because of patriarchy.
because of the patriarchy, brownie points for us.
I mean, I'm just saying.
We're feminists. They are people in power to the people that they hurt. But like nobody around here, like people around here, like there are kids that I went to high school with, and nobody around, like I see these names and I'm like, oh yeah, like that's gross, you know? I never knew that about that person, and that's disgusting, and I disagree with it. But then I go about my life, and eventually everybody forgot,
Right.
and that's because they're not famous. But I do think that it accomplished something,
Mhm.
and what it accomplished is that all of those men actually took a second to reflect on their action. And I don't think that they did that.
You don't think that some of them?
I
were
think
just
that
like,
most of them didn't reflect on their actions
right.
in
They probably just got angry and they were like, "Well, you're wrong.
yeah.
That's not what.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Defensive.
A lot of the men, and I saw it happen. There were arguments on Twitter and stuff like that. But a lot of them they definitely just got defensive and they denied it and blah, blah, blah. And I do think that some men probably really reflected on their actions. And then men who didn't show up on the list, absolutely, I am 100% positive. Every single man who saw that list, even if they had never sexually harassed or abused a girl in the slightest, they thought and they got scared. And they were like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? How have I hurt somebody? Have I hurt somebody?
Oh,
Yeah.
am I on this list?
Oh, am I on
and
this
you
list?
like go through.
Absolutely. And I did that. I went through the list.
Yeah.
And I checked it as it updated. Also to see the other names. Most of this stuff happened when kids were in high school and they were immature and they were selfish and they didn't, not to like justify what they did, but they didn't know any better, perhaps. They weren't as wise as they. That is part of the problem. That's another thing is I literally actually don't think that they knew any better. Okay. I actually believe that they didn't. That they were like, oh yeah, like this girl's hot and I'm gonna get laid. And they're not like thinking. This is a separate tangent.
No, it actually goes into, you've actually touched 3 different parts of my questions that I wanted to ask you later. Hold on. Time out. I want another beer. Okay, so my question was, what is its purpose, cancel culture's purpose, and does it achieve its goal? Which is funny, because you just gave that example of the Utah
Rapists.
sex offender rapist thing where they called out a bunch of people. And we talked about how probably some of the kids that were called out might have taken a second to reflect, but some of them didn't.
And they got angry.
And they would probably I haven't interviewed any of them, but I can only imagine that some of them got angry and defensive and said, that's not what happened. You don't know what you're talking about.
And I did see a lot of like slut shaming as well.
Slut shaming on Twitter.
That was their like that was like their immediate defense. Was you're a whore.
Then that's really upsetting. That begs the question, does it bring actual change in behavior. So, like, let's take, for example, someone like, I feel like I don't know how we would find out if it does or not.
Yeah. Well, no, there's no way that me and you alone.
Right.
could
No, you'd
figure
have to
that out.
conduct
Yeah,
studies. So those kids that got defensive and angry and slut shaming on Twitter, well, they clearly are not going to change.
They're not going to change.
But are they though? They could. They could.
But then also,
they could
like,
get angry and defensive, and shout at people on Twitter, but still be worried of the repercussions of that happening
right.
again.
And so then they're more cautious.
And
but
so
then they have changed out of fear.
Sure, is a result.
It is a result.
Is that where it should come from? I don't know.
Perhaps not.
That's
but
what.
I
That's
mean,
where,
I guess that's better than women being
abused. Right.
So...
And so that comes to this other thing that I was going to talk about. Being motivated out of fear is obviously less desirable than being motivated from like an empathetic and compassionate standpoint. So if we are succeeding in changing people's behavior through fear, if cancel culture is successful at changing people's behavior through fear, right? Because you're afraid, you don't want to get canceled and called out. So then you change your behavior.
Right.
But your behavior is being changed based on fear, right? So if it is successful at changing people's behavior through fear, is that better than nothing?
I think my immediate answer is I do think that yes, it would be better than nothing because there is immediate change and people are being protected. I think that overall, if we start to change people through fear, I think long term,
you think it like generation through generation, it permeates.
Right,
a new habits.
New habits, and they wouldn't be doing it out of fear anymore.
It would be like a learned
behavior
that that's just wrong. What are the negatives, if any, with cancel culture?
It's justice, but it's not justice that is regulated. It's not innocent
chaotic.
Until proven guilty.
It's chaotic.
It is haphazard.
There's no hierarchy.
There's no hierarchy.
There's no leader in the canceling of someone.
And someone's opinion of what is deserving of being canceled could be very different from another person's opinion.
Right.
Of what is deserving of being canceled.
It becomes very arbitrary at that point.
Yes. Also, I do think that to a certain extent, it's meaningless. People will time and time again try to like cancel like specific people like Eminem. And it just doesn't work. Like nothing happens.
No. I think that's a bad example because I don't think there's enough people that actually want to jump on that train. But like, for example, someone like Harvey Weinstein.
Oh yeah.
He went to jail.
Well, yeah.
He went to prison. Bill Cosby, Kevin Spacey.
I need to think of
But then there's also someone like Louis C.K.
Who still has a career.
Who still has a quasi-career.
I think
He was canceled, but now recently, in the past year, he's been doing shows again.
Yeah, if I were a celebrity and I got canceled and I was just like, I don't care, I'm going to keep putting out content.
And that is definitely what Eminem was doing in the early 2000s before cancel culture became a term.
Before it even became a term.
But yeah, he was beating cancel culture.
He just plowed through it.
But the other thing is he wasn't doing any physical. It was his words that people had problems with.
Right, he didn't actually.
All of those other people, Louis C.K., Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein,
actually hurt people.
Yeah, physically did
That's
something.
true. So their crimes were much greater.
Well, their actual crimes.
Their actual crimes. Eminem didn't commit any crimes.
Right.
In terms of, I'm sure he's, I don't know.
No.
Sure, he's committed crimes.
I think he went to court one time for possession of a gun or something. People are angry with his word choice.
Right.
His homophobic lyrics.
But you do have freedom of speech, and you can say whatever you want, and therefore, if you are creating art, I mean, you have an audience no matter what. I feel like you can literally like have an organized group that is like known as a hate group. Nothing's gonna happen to you unless you actually hurt people. There's like the Proud Boys. Also, the KKK is like
That's true.
the KKK. Like it's allowed,
Right.
you know, as long as they're not killing people.
Some of the negatives about cancel culture. What do you think about like people being, because it's chaotic, there's no organized justice system on the internet for cancel culture. So what about people who are unjustly canceled? Like, what about a normal person? You know, those videos go around on Twitter and everywhere, and it's like somebody recording somebody on their phone, and they might have said something vaguely offensive, and then they just lose their job.
I can't think of any specific cases like that, and I do think that overall, most of the time, it's justified. I mean, that certainly happens. Right. Yes, and even with famous people like Aziz Ansari, that's a good example, because he just tried to have sex with a girl, and then she didn't want to, and then she felt very uncomfortable, which is natural. If someone's trying to have sex with you and you don't want to do that, and you're in their house, but then she left.
Right.
And then people tried to cancel him.
Yeah.
People tried to cancel him. And he went out and publicly apologized. For what? For what? Really?
I mean, see, and this is where it gets very, like, it's gray area.
Obviously, we don't really know.
I don't know
specifics.
all of the details, but one could surmise, like, I could imagine a scenario where, okay, Aziz Ansari may not have actually committed any crimes,
but he kept on pressuring.
But he was pressuring her,
applying
pressure to someone who already said no, perhaps.
Yeah.
And while that might not be a crime per se,
it is wrong.
It's wrong. And so the action of canceling Aziz Ansari is letting other men know, hey, don't do this.
And that is back to the Utah rapist thing. I read a lot of the stories. Most of the stories were like that. Most of the stories where he kept on pressuring me and pressuring me and pressuring me and coercing me. You know, it is coercion if they just keep on asking.
Right.
And keep on trying. And then maybe they were unsuccessful, and then maybe they were successful, and she had said yes, and then she regretted it because she was manipulated, pressured.
Right.
And same thing. Like, it's a gray area. It's obviously not, it's not a gray area because that's wrong, but like, should they serve a life sentence?
That's the other thing.
What is the gray area? Yeah. Should they serve a life sentence? Should they be completely canceled, just destroy their career, and they're just done for?
Forever. It just seems, and see, that even still seems to me like too much. But that's why it's kind of a gray area, is because there's no organized cancel culture unit on the internet. So someone like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, who actually raped people,
yes,
they should go to prison. Just like, that's just the end of it, right? Lock them up and throw away the key. They shouldn't have a job anymore, ever, in anything.
Yeah.
But then you have someone like Louis C.K. or Aziz Ansari, who did a bad thing. It was wrong.
Yeah.
And it was wrong and very inconsiderate of someone else.
To put it lightly.
To put it very lightly.
It was very selfish.
I know, right. I don't want to undersell what they did. It was wrong. But should they serve a life sentence? And do we not allow people the opportunity to grow and like become better?
Right. That's a problem. Yeah.
Because I feel like I think that's the number one thing that cancel culture does. It's like, no, you're done. Life sentence. You're dead.
I think, that's the thing that people who are really adamant about canceling people don't understand. I mean, they could change. They could. And if you punish them,
They
might. Because as we discussed, they could reflect. And even if they change out of fear because they were punished and they actually faced...
That's better than nothing.
...consequences. And they're like, oh, okay, I will never do that again because my life is terrible now.
Right.
Then that's good.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't know who the judge should be, because there's people who are upset that Louis C.K. is back doing shows again, right? But then at the same time, he's selling shows. So there's people who want to go see him.
Yeah, who are you to be like, don't go to
Who are
his show?
you? But who am I? I don't know. No, I'm serious
Yeah.
though. Like, who are we to say
If
he should be allowed?
if I thought that he shouldn't have a show, who am I to be like, don't buy a ticket?
Right.
You're not allowed to do that.
Right. Then
Oh,
what?
but I want to
Then
see
what?
him.
Are
Yeah,
you
but-
canceled?
but don't do
Are
it.
you canceled then? Because you went to go see Louis
Right.
CK?
Yeah.
Mm.
And that is another thing, actually.
Mhm.
Yes.
Gray area.
Life is hard.
It's ambiguous. It's vague. That's kind of the conclusion that I feel like I'm coming to in my paper.
Yeah, I mean, like, I
Is
don't know
that
the
like
answer to anything.
sometimes? Yeah. Well, I mean, we're just here to talk about it.
Sure.
Sometimes, like, it seems like very clear cut and dry, like Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes it's like Aziz Ansari or Louis C.K. And it's like, I guess one way to think about it is this, like, society has... Cancel culture is not new. This will be our wrap-up. Cancel culture is not new. The term cancel culture is new. But the action of cancel culture is not. And it has been around through society forever. I mean, when society sees a thing that a person did,
Like we
and
said,
there's-
they got kicked out of the village.
you
That's
get kicked out of the
literally
village.
cancel
If there's
culture.
no legal ramifications for what the rest of society deems to be inappropriate, then they take things into their own hands. And so that's all cancel culture is today. But it faces the same problems that cancel culture has faced in the past. For example, the Salem witch trials. Right?
Right.
That's like the extreme case of how cancel culture can go bad.
Yeah.
You get an
And
angry mob
I was gonna
mentality.
say, well, that came out of ignorance and misogyny.
Misogyny.
But who cares? Any negative repercussion from cancel culture obviously would come out of ignorance. I don't think it would come out of anything else. It would come out of not knowing that much about that person.
Right.
Not actually knowing anything about them. Just hearing, oh, they did that?
Yeah.
Oh, them.
So the way that I described it is that much like evolution through thousands and thousands of years changes biology to be more adept at navigating that environment,
Mm-hmm.
cancel culture is a societal evolution.
Mm-hmm.
We find these mutations in society that we don't like,
Yeah,
and we have to cast them out.
we do.
And we go through this process in like a very natural and evolutionary way.
Mm-hmm.
We naturally will weed out the sex offenders and the racists and the whatevers
Yeah.
that we don't like. And that's just like a natural occurrence of being in a society.
We live in a society.
We live in a society. We do.
We live in a society.
Unless you live
That's what we'll end on.
unless you live like in a mountain by yourself, then you live in a society. And that's on you.
Yeah.
Just two brothers.
Just two brothers.